Hello fellow sim racers, today I'm taking a look at another track that's been brought to Assetto Corsa by the guys at the Assetto Corsa Reboot Project. Situated in a picture postcard valley just outside of Salzburg, the Salzburgring is arguably better known for two-wheeled action than it is for four. The tight confines of the circuit are perhaps not as well suited to the super-fast modern race cars as the more internationally well-known Österreich A1 Red Bull Ring, delete as appropriate. But the size of runoff areas is of little concern to sim racers, which means that the Salzburgring is a much more enticing prospect for our simulated racing nonsense. The track layout has a sort of Monza in the mountains vibe, super fast throughout with long straights broken up by the occasional chicane, the last of which bears more than a passing resemblance to the Ascari chicane at the aforementioned Italian Autodrome. The valley in which the track is located induces some of that all-important elevation change that we all get far too excited about, and, well, it forces some pretty extreme camber onto some of the corners. More about that later. So what about the Assetto Corsa mod then? After all, that's probably why you're here. I'm reviewing the 1.0 version of this mod, so in theory this representation of the Salzburgring is complete and correct, and for the most part I would agree with that statement. Before I go any further, I'd like to make a note about the lineage of this mod. It's based on the RFactor version by Com8 and Steppenwolf, and it was converted to Assetto Corsa by SandroX. The ACRP guys appear to have done some tidying up, fixing and modernising in line with their ethos. So, first of all, this mod does a fantastic job of capturing the look and feel of the Salzburgring. Unlike more advanced facilities, there isn't a plethora of hospitality centres, grandstands, control towers and other assorted concrete eyesores littered around the real facility, which means a lot of the character of the place comes from the landscape, and in particular the mountains and trees, and I have to say I can't fault the mod in this respect. If I were to nitpick, everything is probably a little bit too clean and tidy, particularly the Armco. The race room version of the track certainly has a bit more character to it, mainly due to the wear and tear around the circuit. Though, if I'm honest, I think the race room version goes a bit far in this regard, looking like a circuit that should probably be the subject of a moderately successful GoFundMe campaign. The track mesh seems pretty good to me, capturing the varied undulations of the circuit very well indeed. Compared to the race room representation of Salzburgring, this track layout is spot on. However, the race room version is monumentally bumpy, almost to the point of unpleasantness. Having watched a number of onboards, I'm of the opinion that the Assetto Corsa version is a little bit too smooth, while the race room version is a bit exaggerated in this regard. So, as is often the case, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Moving on, the track rubbers in exactly as you would expect. However, I have noticed that in certain conditions, the texture for this appears to be placed ever so slightly above track level. This is only really noticeable in replay mode, with the sun hitting at harsh angles or in foggy weather. Speaking of replays, the replay cameras are excellent. I know this is probably something that most people don't really care about, but it's important to video makers like myself, so 8 thumbs up from me. I spoke earlier about the interesting camber of some of the corners. Well, to be more accurate, they could probably be described as banking. Daytona it ain't, but the 180-degree banked corners at either end of the loop provide the opportunity for a variety of workable racing lines, which makes overtaking a very interesting prospect indeed. I can tell you, an AI car wall of deathing it around the outside of you is a bit of an eye-opener. Last but not least, and because I know there are literally several people out there that care about it, the hot air balloon moves about the place as the sessions progress, though I've not yet ascertained if it has free will. As is often the case with fan-created mods, there are a few areas that could be improved. As I mentioned previously, the track rubber textures do appear to float a little bit above the track surface in some places. Furthermore, everywhere, and I mean everywhere, appears to be a DRS zone. Now obviously this isn't really an issue with 99.9% of cars, but for the Formula Hybrids and the URD DTM pack, they will have access to all of the DRS. That being said, if Porsche can do it with their 919 Evo at Spa, I really don't see the problem. Another minor niggle is that the start lights don't work and you have to rely on the in-game overlay. This is something that's fairly common in fan-made mods, it has to be said, but it would be nice to see it fixed if there's a 1.1 version. Speaking of future updates, the ACRB website lists revising the AI line as a goal for the next update, and there is definitely an area that could be improved. The AI line through the final chicane in particular doesn't utilise the full width of the track, and therefore isn't as quick as it should be. Furthermore, the fast Ostschleifer corner does seem to entice the AI into the gravel trap a little too often for my liking. And while we're on the subject of AI, I have to talk about turns 1 and 2. This mod suffers from what I like to call Monza syndrome, wherein the cars slow to an absolute crawl on lap 1 as there is so little space for manoeuvre. This isn't really a fault of the mod as far as I can tell, it's just a facet of how the Assetto Corsa AI works, but it's worth highlighting to you guys anyway. So, let's take a lap of the Salzburgring. I like to use single-seater cars for this so you get a chance to take in all of the details without the unnecessary stuff like roofs and roll cages getting in the way. Rather than choosing an appropriate European Junior Formula car, I thought I'd take the United Racing Design Indy Lights car out for a spin, as it's an absolute blast to drive. The chicane at turns 1 and 2 dares you to take lots of curb, but this is about as much as I can manage in this stiff Indy Lights car. Run the car out wide over the curb and glide through turns 3 and 4, which are corners in name only. The braking zone for the critical turn 5 is downhill, but the banking works in your favour. You can take a tight line, a late apex or a double apex here, all of which seem to work out pretty well. The crucial thing is getting the power down nice and early for the long drag up the hill. The kinks through turns 6 to 10 don't count as corners at all, which means there is plenty of opportunity for overtaking through this section. That, and there is plenty of time for sightseeing on a lap like this. Turn 11, the Oschleifer is flat out in this car, but it's an absolute beast in anything with less grip. You brake hard again for the banked turn 12. A late apex seems to be the way to go here. Don't run out too wide as you've got to be on the right hand side of the track for the turn 13, 14 and 15 chicane. As I mentioned before, this has an Ascari chicane vibe about it. Keep the momentum going through all 3 corners and you're back onto the start-finish straight for another lap. So, this Salzburgring mod is a pretty entertaining place to throw a virtual car around. And in my opinion, the original creators and the Assetto Corsa Reboot Project guys have done a decent job of capturing the magic of this place. As mentioned, there are a few areas that could be improved, but that's true of almost all fan-made content. If you're big on racing against the AI, then you may be better off waiting for the next version of this mod. Or, if you're an enterprising sort, there's no reason you can't record your own AI line file. As it stands, this Salzburgring mod would be great for league and club racing, or for the hot lap heroes out there. Ultimately, the real Salzburgring is a fairly niche circuit, and this track layout may not appeal to everyone, but I for one am enjoying throwing classic sports cars and single-seaters around this unique mountain circuit. So, that about wraps everything up for this mod track review. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you did, then it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. As always, thank you for donating your precious free time by watching, it is very much appreciated. So all that's left to say is goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day.